Today, our prominent speakers from various disciplines, policymaker, state-owned enterprise, economists, financial institutions, and private will engage in a discussions on crowding in investment to accelerate Indonesia's energy transition. So can affordability and energy transitions go hand in hand? Well, let's engage in a discussion to foster energy transition in Indonesia by inviting our moderator, Mbak Maya. Please take the lead. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our talk show, Crowding in Investment to Accelerate Indonesia's Energy Transition. Thank you very much for joining the session today. We will have some exciting presentations and sharing from some of our distinguished speakers across institutions. It is my great honor to serve as the moderator for today. My name is Maya Rani Puspita. I'm currently the Executive Vice President of Corporate Finance in PLN, an Indonesian electricity company. There has been many collaborations between PLN with some strategic partners. Even this morning, we have signed several agreements with regard to how we can accelerate the renewable energy development and energy transition in general in Indonesia. We've seen that Indonesia will be vital in the net zero emissions and for the global change. For now, remembering that some of the speakers are not here yet, we will invite them shortly, but we will go to the panel discussions for now. So please allow me to invite some of the panelists for today. Please welcome to the stage Ibu Cynthia Rusli, Bapak Andrew Jeffrey, Bapak Francois de Maricourt, Ibu Julie Monaco, and Bapak Edwin Shahruzad. Please give a warm welcome to all of our panelists. Okay, good morning to all of our panelists. Thank you very much for joining the sessions today. To kick off the panel discussion, please allow me to invite the Director of Finance PLN, Ibu Cynthia Rusli. She will be sharing unlocking innovative financing schemes to provide clean and affordable energy for all. So, Ibu Cynthia, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Bu Maya. So, good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Probably a bit of a presentation to start the context so that we can discuss more in detail for, according to the theme, crowding in investment to accelerate Indonesia's energy transitions. Slide, please. So for those of you who has not been familiar with Indonesia, so this is just a corporate profile. So we have around 70 gigawatts installed capacity, which is in operations in the country. We have 87 million customers serving 279 million people of the Republic of Indonesia, and we have around 29 plus billion US dollars in revenue. Next. So this is basically probably people have already acknowledged that we have what we call it the accelerated renewable energy development. So we have calculated the amount of investment that we need in terms of the gigawatts as well as the money amounts which should be provided through PLN or through IPP or private projects. So the amount of investment amounts to 157 billion US dollars. So this is the challenge on how we should mobilize private capital to finance PLN project, either it's EPC or in terms of IPP like projects. And just to let everyone know that we have been basically assisted by ADB and some other multilaterals to develop our financing platform internally. And up to now, we have basically has recent sustainable financing in terms of green loan, RBL, term loan facilities from various multilateral, which amount to 3.3 billion US dollars. So in terms of multilateral, we have no issues. It's already done. It's already in progress. So the help is very obvious. But we need to have a challenge now on the right-hand side. But at least we have already 44.9 or almost 45 billion US dollars in the list We just need to push this forward and how to mobilize those financing in a later stage. We basically have already had the scenario, the plan, the projects list. Then we need to work on how to mobilize the financing in terms of executing it into the financing agreements. Next. So in PLN itself, so anticipating for the financing from the private sectors as well as multilateral, of course, internally we have developed our internal institutional capacity and we strengthen our ESG governance, understanding that we have a challenge with the coal plant dominant produced by within PLN system. So of course we need to have a more systematic and structured way of managing our ESG issues and ESG governance. So it's basically have been installed in the company, and we have as much as a dashboard, monitoring system, divisions, specific divisions. We have a war room for this sustainability. So those are the internal institutional capacity that we are now building just to anticipate the energy transitions financing down the road. And of course, we on the financing preparations, we have started to develop our framework. And recently, with the country platform, the PTSMI, we are now about to form a joint secretariat for pushing the executions of the energy transition projects. So this is going to be the key milestone for us to push forward the projects to be financed and preparing pipelines that is bankable enough to be financed by the private sectors. Next. So these are some of the initiatives within PLN, and we have a cadence, we have initiatives, sub-initiatives, and we have the strong PIC for that. Next, just go through. This is just an example on how we are doing it, monitoring it, every aspect and every metrics of the ESG that we are focusing on, just to ensure that we have, show that we are internally we have a commitment from top to the operational level within the organizations. Next. This is basically the funding privatization. So of course from public finance and the private finance. Then today I think the focus is from private finance. Next. So I think these are some of the basic combinations of the financing source from the public, of course, including various types of instruments, up to the guarantees products, private investment, blended finance, philanthropy, and recently we are now pushing also carbon finance. Next. So these are how the Indonesian institutional arrangement with regard to the financing, the lenders, the financing intermediaries, the borrowers, and then also investment focus areas with regard to the things that we are doing on early retirements, on the variable renewable energy accelerations, as well as the just transition components. So these are the areas that we are focusing on, and then we are, of course, needs to push forward on the prioritization approach for the public project as well as the private finance projects. Next. So I think this is the last slide. So what we need from international parties for supporting PLN or Indonesia energy transition, of course, number one is debottlenecking, limitations on green financing or energy transition financing, whether it's coming from financial services authority or regulators in the financial sectors, or from industry, or even from the internal regulation within the financiers, be the commercial banks or some other institutions or investors. Of course, we need to have intensive engagement between Indonesia's energy transition ecosystem, PTSMI, PLN, and some other key stakeholders, ministries, MSOE, MEMR, Ministry of Finance. As we mentioned, that we are now pushing for the joint office to accelerate the executions of the projects, and through this joint office with the country platform, support, we will have more engaged communications with the private investors, be commercial banks or investors. Then this is just to show that how we have a strong commitment and deliberations to push forward the Indonesian energy transition journey. Of course, part of that are technical assistance for project preparations, project structuring, for ensuring the bankability for the PLN energy transition projects. And in the short run, we need, of course, financing support. We have a JETP commitment. We have already the SIP, Comprehensive Investment Plan and Policy. But we need to do now is ensuring the framework for disbursement and framework for making this as a workable platform is something that we need to push forward. So I think these are the context for Indonesia energy transition financing that we are needed now. Thank you very much. Back to Bu Maya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ibu Cynthia. So, Bu Cynthia mentioned about how financing schemes are very important and innovative financing beyond business as usual should be pushed forward. So, okay, thank you very much and welcome Pak Darmo for joining here. Next, please allow me to invite Pak Andrew Jeffries. He's the director of Just Energy Transition Partnership Team from the energy sector ADB. He will be sharing about the global sustainability finance opportunities for Indonesia. So Pak Andrew, time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me today. As a multilateral development bank, we're committed to be the climate bank for the region. And so I've been asked today to talk a little bit about sustainable finance options for Indonesia. I've spent many, many years thinking about investments and financings to improve and expand energy delivery systems. But this, what I'm going to show a little bit today will be a little more broad than that for climate goals of Indonesia in general and other sustainable options. Next slide. I don't know this. Okay. So I'll start just by showing, kind of look at a regional snapshot of the kind of climate finance needs of the ASEAN region. ASEAN countries face considerable vulnerabilities to climate change, rising sea levels, typhoons, and effects on agriculture and the like. Climate impacts to the ASEAN economies range from 15 to 30% of GDP, depending on the country by 2050. So you add to that these countries' climate commitments and decarbonization efforts, and it goes without saying the financing needs are just enormous. So at the same time, a lot of these countries face budgetary pressure coming from the COVID-19 pandemic. So this all kind of highlights the importance of policy, innovation, private investment, alongside, public investment to kind of achieve sustainable development goals and climate actions. So sustainable finance in particular is one source, certainly not the only one, but it's one worth tapping into to contribute to the narrowing this funding gap for both high levels of public and private investments that are needed. So one source of financing for Indonesians' climate financing needs comes from the growing global sustainable capital market. These include green bonds, bonds supporting social initiatives, sustainability and sustainability-linked bonds. So these are fixed income instruments linked to exclusive proceed use that meet certain criteria. The difference between the green, the social, the sustainability bonds lies in how they're categorized and how the proceeds will be spent. And of course, for PLN and the energy transition, the most applicable of all of this will be the green bonds. And as you can see from this slide, the global market starting from 2012 started from quite a low base, and it's actually reached cumulatively over $3.5 trillion by 2022 and has grown since then. So going back to ASEAN, this shows kind of the global sustainability, bonds and financings that have been utilized by ASEAN countries in the region, totaling about 40 billion US dollars so far to date. That 40 billion number excludes about 4 billion of Indonesian sukuk that's been issued that's ASEAN compliant, but it's not including in that number. So as you can see, Thailand and then the Philippines and Malaysia have been the top issuers in the region, followed by Singapore. And Indonesia is shown in purple. And given the size of Indonesia's economy, there's certainly a lot more room for Indonesia to grab, kind of a larger piece of the pie here. So one issue to consider, though, when you look at bond issuances is this is relevant for the sovereign government. It's relative for large SOEs like PLN or large financial institutions. It's not very applicable for a lot of the smaller climate finance needs, throughout the archipelago. So this brings me to my final slide, and I didn't realize I'd be sitting next to Pak Edwin today, but it's very kind of useful that I'm sitting next to him. This is just featuring a Sustainable Development Goals Indonesian 1 Green Finance Facility that the Asian Development Bank developed in cohorts with PTSMI. So this is an example of addressing some of the needs that the large financings and the bond offerings and the like can't reach. This phase 1 of this program was approved in 2022. It's just $150 million. It goes until 2027, but this is a sustained program that can have a series of loans. And so this is the example of a financial intermediary loan, financial intermediation loan, where it's a loan from ADP to the Republic of Indonesia, on lent to PTSMI, as the state-owned infrastructure financing institution, they use the proceeds to on-lend to many different smaller projects around the country. Projects for ultimate funding can, of course, include renewable energy, water supply, waste management, and sustainable urban transport. And so, again, one very important part of how this program's been designed is it's meant to catalyze private capital. So this program is meant to have a multiplier effect of 3 to 8 times the actual ADB loan funds. And that comes from PTSMI's own funds and from private, institutional, and commercial sources that can be combined with PTSMI's loans, and of course equity from project sponsors, to jumpstart all kinds of climate and financing initiatives. So this is just an example of something we've been doing, and I see I'm out of time. And so thank you very much for having me. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Pak Andrew. Pak Andrew highlighting how the very important factor of sustainable financing to unlock the potential financing for Indonesia. Before I invite the third panelist, please allow me to welcome Pak Darmawan Prasojo and Pak Febrio Kacaribu for joining the session. And I would like to invite Pak Darmo to give your short remarks for this session. Pak Darmo, the stage is yours, Pak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, beautiful afternoon today. I would like to thank you, Pak Febrio Kacaribu, for making this event possible. Also the Deputy of Coordinating Maritime Investment, Pak Rahmat Kaimuddin, distinguished speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I always emphasize that the journey of humankind is facing a very serious threat. The earth is warming and we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So now is how we're going to walk the talk. And here we've been doing so much, but it's always not enough. So this COP28 is giving us much deeper understanding. First, the good news is the global communities to this forum to become unified, to have the common understanding, giving us a sense of pride, conviction, that no matter the challenge ahead, we're going to be able to keep moving forward. But this kind of event is also giving us a sense of humility, that the more we work on it, we understand that this is going to become to be a fierce, complex, long, grueling battle. And the long battle has just begun. With this kind of a challenge, we've been building so many scenarios. Business as usual, the gas-led, scenarios, and then also the accelerated renewable energy development, the ultra-accelerated renewable energy development with coal phase out, with coal phase down, and every single scenarios. And Pak Febrio, we had so many meetings to discuss about this. And technical challenge, mismatch between the location of renewable energy and the epicentrum of demand. No transition without any transmission. We need to design and build green enabling transmission line. Price tag is more than 20 billion US dollars. Rate of return is very low. It's a high risk project. And then we also have to manage the intermittency of the variable renewable energy, solar and wind. We need to design and build the smart grid, another price tag of 5 billion US dollars. Those two green enabling transmission lines and also the smart grid, technically feasible, but commercial viability has to be addressed in such a way government has to interfere in such a way that this is going to be possible. But on the generation side, we are able to come up with a project that is not only technically feasible, but also commercially viable, in which each time we do an auctions, the competition is very healthy. In that regard, there is what we call the country platform, in which we actually shifting from fragmented stakeholders of domestic to become unified. We also have the comprehensive investment policy planning, in which we're going to have the list of projects. We're going to consolidate the flow of capital, solicited, non-solicited, private bank, multilateral bank, philanthropy, private investors, in such a way the global communities that previously fragmented to become unified, and the flow of investment is going to really works very well. And for today, for PLN, we are already shifting from conventional financing to embrace the green financing, sustainable financing, and in it, we have to have what we call the green financing management, that monitoring how the disbursement of fund is going to be monitored closely in such a way is going to increase the accountability. So today, how the crowding in investment is going to accelerate Indonesia energy transition is a forum that is so important. Why? Because we need to collaborate. That's the only way to move forward. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Pak Darmawan Prasojo, for the remarks. Next, please allow me to invite Pak Febrio Kacaribu, our Head of Fiscal Policy Office, to give his keynote speech. Stage is yours, Pak.
I think you left your cell phone up here, or somebody's cell phone at least, I don't know. So, lost and found. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Really proud to see all of you. You are all familiar faces to us, and I am familiar face to you. We've worked on this journey for several years now. It'll be easy for us to say to ourselves, have we done enough? And we can look at what we have done, and we can easily say that we haven't done enough. So an event like this today, when I see private sectors, especially I'm looking at you, Julie, and Francois, because ADB and World Bank, we have had a very established relationship. in terms of how we finance not only projects, we finance programs. We finance multi-years program. So when we talk about crowding in investment, this is in particular what we mean by that. We all have worked hard on this. Countries, initially maybe 2 or 3 years ago, some countries still confused what to do. Some of us now quite clear as to what we want to do. Multilateral development banks, several years ago, also quite confused about what to do. Now, we get some things that we figured out, and we would like to test them. So MDBs and countries, some of us already forming quite good alignment and also program, building upon what we have done many, many years before the climate change agenda was actually in the front of the agendas. But now we have this very particular challenge that we acknowledge together. Not only we are alleviating poverty and improving development in many countries, but we also need to make sure that the trajectory of the development will be a green one, will be a sustainable one. We have had a lot of discussions about consensus as to 1.5, 2.0, 3 point something risk that we are all facing as a global community. We know all of the risks. And like Pak Darmawan also mentioned, that many of us already starting to come up with credible scenarios. Not all, to be honest. Some countries are now quite advanced in terms of readying our own system, our own electricity system, and also up to the economic system. How would an economy operate when you have such a disruptive capex as a result of big change in your energy mix? That needs to be softened. That needs to be smoothed out. We have done our work to some extent between countries like Indonesia with MDBs. ADB is in the front of this since Glasgow, and then last year, and then this year here in Dubai. We are not shy to admit that this is not really easy, but we've done our homework and we've done our calculation, we've done our scenarios. We talk to each other as to what are the gaps and where, now this is the very important one, where Julie and Francois is going to fill in the gaps, right? So that's how we talk about the crowding in investment. This is how we identify that for a program, for a transition energy to be able to happen, not in 1 year, but sustainably for years to come until we can actually manage to deliver, it has to be everything put on the table strategy. So we cannot say that this is going to be involving constitutionality, but then we don't know where the constitutionality is going to come from. We can't say that the private sector will be coming when they see the project is ready, when they're not really sure when the projects are going to be ready and what kind of readiness of the projects that they are looking at. And increasingly now, just to add more challenges, we see that in global finance world, this is not getting easier. We've met with our investors. A lot of investors in Europe and increasingly now in the US as well, already voicing about exclusion list, which is going to be really hard for a country and an big energy company like PLN to actually implement the transition plan if when we do the transition, we cannot get access to the capital. So this is becoming increasingly very, very serious problem, and we're going to talk about it a lot more in the international fora, be it in a G20, COP like this today, and also in many, many other fora, including in the regulatory fora, like FSB, and also IMF, etc. Because when you talk about transitioning and just talking about energy transition, this is one of the biggest bill out there when you talk about sustainable finance. So it is very important for us to put everything on the table. We're not shy for saying that we haven't figured it out all, but we have figured out some. Let's move on and let's move forward with what we got so far. And we've done a lot of work on planning. For example, with JETP, we have this CIPP. That's one achievement. But then it is time for us to look at the implementation. It is now for us to work on project by project. This particular year, 2023, how many projects have we done? How many green projects have we done? How many transition projects have we done? And we need to talk about that in plain language. Starting with the CIPP, next year we need to also come up with regular and also accountable report as to how many projects have going to be done in 1 year, how many billion US dollars that we're talking about actually being implemented. So this is how we would like to move together, to work together. It is not an easy one, but I believe we've done some steps, and we've done a lot of communications with Francois and also with Julie and also friends from GFANS. We know what we want, and we know that there are some steps that we can actually take together. For example, we can already identify several projects from hundreds of projects that is listed in our CIPP, and let's start from there and then prove that we can actually prove the concept. And I think together, it is not when we talk about Minister of Finance, PLN, Ministry of Energy will be saying, yeah, we can build the program, and then at the end of the day, we're gonna send the bill to the Ministry of Finance. That is true, and I embrace that. We embrace that as a Minister of Finance. And that's why, because of the complexity of the problem, let's work together. We always mention about blended finance. That's the truism of what we're working on. And that is also the truism of the blended effort that we actually working together. So I'm very convinced that we can still working together and then embrace the role of each of us, and then we can deliver the goal that we would like to achieve. That's from me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of your participation.
Thank you very much, Pak Fabrio, for setting the context. Could you please, I would like to invite Pak Fabrio to come on stage again, because we have prepared the token of appreciation from PLN as the host of this event, Pak Darmo. If you would like to deliver the we're going to have a group photo after this. No problem. Thank you so much, Pak Fabrio, Pak Darmon. Could you please stay on stage so we can have a group photo with all the panelists? Thank you. Apologize, Pak, for keep inviting you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Pak Darmo and Pak Fabrio. Please allow me to continue with the panel discussions now. Allow me to invite Pak Edwin Syarizal from PTSMI to deliver your presentations or sharing. Pak Edwin, the time is yours.
Thank you. Since it is just 7 minutes of speaking, I would prefer to share my view directly. With regard to, I represent a special mission vehicle of the Ministry of Finance. Sorry, my voice is not well. And a mandated country platform manager for energy transition in Indonesia. I think, of course, our aim, to find a way to support financing of the energy transition in Indonesia. What is defined as energy transition, if we refer to JETP documents, it comprises of 5 things. First, renewable, efficiency, whether ESCO and everything. And then connectivity, smart grid, transmission, coal phase out, coal phase down, yeah, and the last thing is CCUS, yeah. I think the challenge right now is to translate the concept of energy transition into a transition asset class. Because when we are talking about transition as an asset class, if it is renewable, it's very easy. Yeah, because there are many contractual agreements that is essentially a renewable asset class and is ready to be financed. Yeah, but if you are talking about like coal phase out, I think today is our early journey, yeah, marked by the signing of the agreement with regard to the road to amendment PPA, or namely framework agreement. This is the early stage of how can we create coal phase out as a transition asset class. And the other thing is, I think, interconnection. I think it is primarily, I think, still belong to PLN. I think at the moment, yeah, if we are talking about interconnection as an asset class, perhaps it is an asset class within the balance sheet of PLN. So the only way of financing interconnection is financing PLN. Yeah, I don't know whether in the future there might be independent transmission and asset class. It is depend on our journey, as mentioned Pak Darmo. So, okay, in short, yeah, our role relevant to this topic, yeah. I think we have three approach. Yeah, first thing first, because as Ibu Menteri mentioned that energy transition has to conduct in a most efficient way, in the sense that the only least cost or low cost is acceptable to us, then I think the primary mover, of course, multilateral development institution like ADB, World Bank, and it is also relevant to us, yeah, as the SDG Indonesia One Country Platform, and we have the support, yeah, from many philanthropy and multilateral development institutions. It is relevant for us to create financing to PLN in a different way. In such way, we can blend our grant money with the financing. That's what we signed today in the early morning. So in short, we are going to introduce a kind of blended financing to PLN. That's first thing first. And I think the second approach, the PPP way. We must accelerate the way PPP is going to be introduced to support energy transition. And I think for that reason, PPP can be a bridge to the private finance, because of course PPP will eventually attract investors. And of course PPP, there's been a setup of a framework PPP, thanks to Pak Febrio and Ministry of Finance, that, I forgot to mention, Pak Febrio has recently enacted, yeah, PMK 103, yeah, which is basically giving a support for us to conduct energy transition. There are three support, yeah, access to concessionality. In the PMK, it is clearly stipulated that we have an access to concessionality with a rate maximum government bond yield. Maximum, not minimum. So I think it's good news. And secondly, I think there are also a support here and there with regard of direct lending. There is an element of government guarantee here. So now I think it's time for the regulation to be tested, and I think continue to PPP. Yeah, I think it is also time for us to, I think, collaborate more, yeah, share the view and share the appetite so that we can, I think, making conceptual framework into a realization, yeah, and at the end of the day, yeah, making the energy transition asset class growing in Indonesia and can obtain financing from private, of course, with the support of the MOF and the government. So I think I stop here. I'll return back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pak Edwin. LPTSM as the country platform manager will play a very important role in the financing in Indonesia, and we note that how we need to accelerate the PPP scheme for Indonesian financing. Now I will invite Ibu Julie to present your material. Okay, Bu Julie is the Managing Director, Global Head, Public Sector, Banking, Capital Markets, and Advisory Divisions from Citi. She will share about the financing sustainable infrastructure with sustainable development goals. Bu Julie, the time is yours, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you. So Citi is very proud to be a long-term financing provider to PLN, an incredibly important client to Citi. Also, we have been one of the GFANZ members and part of the JET-P process with Indonesia from the beginning. So it's exciting. We were at the event last night, and it's exciting to see that we're at this point where we have these 400 projects, and we now have to get down to the hard work of how we're going to get this done. What I've been asked to do today is talk a little bit about the importance of the capital markets. And the end game here is that the capital markets are going to be a facilitator in how we're going to recycle capital and how we're going to be able to scale this in a way that is going to be necessary. And obviously, we have to start off these projects with project loans, but we're going to have to figure out how to fast get them into the capital markets in order to have the amount of capital. I think last night the statistic that was said that to get through this entire transition plan for Indonesia is $154 billion between now and 2040. Was the number that was quoted last night. We're not going to get there without the capital markets. So this is a much longer conversation, but I'm going to try to boil it down to this 5-minute time frame. So on the first page, all I want to highlight is a few things. There's over a 3.6 trillion of outstanding of sustainability bonds right now. Although you see a slight decline in 23, we're at an all-time high for sovereign issuance around sustainability bonds. It now makes up 20% of the capital markets, and it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to be a more and more important part of the solution. And obviously, you know, that's already been discussed. But really important on this slide is power companies for years have been using the sustainable bond markets for all different types of projects. And what you see here is 56% of the financing raised in the capital markets was used for smart grids and for transmission, which we know is a big part of what we have to do in Indonesia. So I think it's important to see that. Secondly, if you go to the next page, Indonesia has I have to click this forward. Indonesia has the benefit of being the pioneer in souvenir sustainable bond market. So, you know, the first sovereign issue of green sukuk, the first SDG bond in euro, the first sovereign bond with the ICMA principles for blue bonds. So again, there's established with investors that Indonesia is serious about this, right? So this is going to be make this much easier as we talk about this for this energy transition plan. So then you go to the next slide. All right, and here is just an example of Pertamina earlier this year on a transaction that Citi was a lead on using the sustainability bond market for financing for Pertamina. So I think that's a perfect example in Indonesia of how it was utilized. Go to the next. PLN, so we worked with PLN on the green bond framework. It's all in place, it's ready to go. Markets haven't been favorable in terms of rates right now, so this is something that hasn't been done yet, but PLN is ready to go, and we were very happy to be part of that process. When we look at Indonesia's JET-P targets, We don't have to review those again. Everybody's been talking about the targets and what we have to do, you know, and that there's this 95 billion between 2023 and 2030, and all the jet funding needs. So really what I want to do is just spend a few minutes on this last slide, this is the most important thing and what I really want to highlight. So let me just talk about this in terms of sustainable bonds to refinance Jet P projects. What we're saying is what's going to have to be done differently in order to scale is to figure out exactly how to structure the loans up front differently. And so one of the ideas that we have when we look at the loans at the bottom, we just did hypothetically 3 Jet P projects, right? The biggest issue that we know is that institutional investors will not take construction risk, right? So when these projects have to get financed initially, they're going to get financed as project loans. But how we structure those loans now will determine whether or not we're going to be able to take them out and recycle them into the capital markets. So it's really, really important for us to go to the drawing board and say, when we structure the project loan right now, you have to say, in a period of time, you want to take it out into the capital markets. How do you do that? Well, one way you could do that is if we can structure, and I'm looking at my colleague from ADB, if we can structure it as a mini perm, right, where you're doing a mini perm for 7 years, right, and you actually build pricing into that loan that once you get to the point where there's revenue on that project, you start ratcheting up the cost of staying in that financing to actually force that financing to become more cost effective to bring it into the capital markets. What you can do there is then take 3 of these projects. When they get to the point where they're beyond the construction phase and revenue is starting to come in, you can package these 3 loans together and bring them out to the capital markets as a, you know, as an SPV financing and bring it out to the capital markets and the investors want it. So what's the advantage of that? Obviously, the cost of capital for these brownfield projects wind up being reduced from what the initial financing was. The extension of the debt repayment out into the institutional market. The project bonds and conditions allow for significantly less restrictive obligations than the covenants that are in the project loans. It's a diversification of the investor base. You are going to attract different investors to come into this project. You can free up, and it's everybody freeing up the capital. It's the commercial banks, it's the MDBs, and it's as well as the government being able to free up this capital to get, if we're going to get through 400 projects, we cannot do project loans the way we've been doing them in the past, where we're staying in these project loans forever, where the development banks stay in them for, we have to finance them up front with that eye to taking them out to the capital markets. The other thing that could be done in this to even further reduce, and we talked about the use of carbon credits, we have done some very interesting transactions with the World Bank where we've embedded carbon credits in to actually reduce the cost of the coupon on the bonds. We did want a transaction in Vietnam. So it's not here in this example, but you could actually even further reduce the cost of the financing because by the time you're through the construction phase, you can start monetizing those carbon credits and embed that into the bond as you're bringing the bond into the capital markets. So it's going to require all of us to behave differently when we come to the table to structure these loans. So talking about the capital markets may seem like it's far off, but we could absolutely see an explosion in project bonds if we structure the loans correctly, and that's where we're focusing our attention at Citi, working with our partners in the MDBs to say we all have to behave differently, and we have to have our eye on scaling this if we're really going to get 400 projects done.
Thank you so much, Bu Julie. I think it's very important that you bring this to our attention, how the capital market will play important roles and how to structure the loans in a way that we can refinance after sometimes. Okay, for the last panelist, I would like to invite Francois de Maricourt, the President Director and CEO of HSBC Indonesia. He will share about the innovative financial solutions to balance affordability. Time is yours, Francois.
Thank you very much, Bumaya. And so, first of all, let me briefly talk about the approach of HSBC to net zero. At HSBC, we believe that our net zero ambition can only be achieved in partnership with our clients. And the biggest impact we can have is by supporting our clients and working with them to develop their transition plan. We want to support our clients in the most carbon intensive industries on the transition to lower emission. I'm sure that you might have seen the articles from Mark Carney in The Economist recently, and he was saying that finance needs to go wherever emissions are, and it's what is required not to have an impact. At HSBC, we aim to facilitate $1 trillion of sustainable finance and investment by 2030 to support our clients in this industry. And in terms of our approach, the best way is for us to form a view about our clients' long-term future and the role we can play to support their vision. We do that by working with them on their transition plan, and we have developed a process to assess these plans to help inform areas for future developments and guide business decisions. Now, more specifically about financing the transition in Indonesia. Energy, of course, is the biggest emitter of CO2, and this sector should be prioritized. It is estimated that Indonesia needs around 310 billion to meet its NDC, or 150, as was discussed by Julie earlier, to meet some of its other targets. And clearly the government or PLN cannot meet all of its needs all alone. And we need partnership. Both public and private finance are needed to unlock the capital requirement to finance this substantial amount and help to reduce emissions. And blended finance is here to direct capital where it's most needed to mitigate the effect of climate change. And this is where there is a lot of work to be done. Work on policy frameworks and public finance to catalyze more private investments by reducing the risk profile of new infrastructure and technology. And multilateral development banks like ADB can accelerate private sector-led projects by helping to de-risk investments and getting more capital flow into these projects. And free enablers will drive more private investments. Work with national governments to have clear energy transition plan and break down policy and regulatory barriers to project implementation. Establish a framework for transition finance. The framework and standard for green finances are well developed, but more work needs to be done. And emerging markets in particular still need some cleaner fossil fuel in order to help their transition. The key is to ensure that there is a pathway for decarbonization and retiring fossil fuel assets. And the third enabler is to establish an effective risk-sharing model where multilateral development banks and national governments take greater risk ownership in public-private blended finance. So that's some of the enablers that we see in order to attract more private financing. And I would like to give a few examples of this partnership in transition finance. One great example for me is MIGA. And MIGA is an entity that is part of the World Bank. I'm sure that several of you are familiar with it. And they work in de-risking projects by providing a guarantee that allows banks to provide financing for hard-to-finance projects. And this is a well-established scheme that could be replicated in a larger scale to finance the energy transition. Another example is the JETP, and we have already discussed quite a lot about the JETP. With other banks in defense like Citi, we have joined the JETP to mobilize and finance $21 billion of public and private finance over the next 3 to 5 years. And the idea is, of course, to improve the energy transition in Indonesia that will be accelerated and put forward from 2060 to 2050. Under the JETP, different kinds of projects have been identified. And this is where we have to be smart around how to allocate the different kind of finance. Certain projects, like financing the early retirement of coal-fired power plant, will require public finance because of the cost and the economics. And I was quite delighted to see this morning the signing ceremony of a framework agreement between PLN, INA, Marubeni, and ADB to really progress on this project that will require quite a lot of public finance from an economic perspective. Certain other projects have been mentioned, and you mentioned Padamawan, around all the transmission. Transmission is low return project, and this is where also you need to have public financing to help. But there are some projects where market rate should be applied, and that's the case of all the renewable energy projects. If they are to be sustainable, they have to be able to be financed at market rates. So JETP is really a good example of blended finance of a good partnership. And lastly, I would like to mention very briefly, we talked about Shriban Satu this morning and the framework agreement that was mentioned. And this is really, I think, one of the best examples of blended finance, where you will have some of the ADB working on it. Potentially you can have in some projects some philanthropic money, and then the bank can add some debt. And this is really important because Southeast Asia and Indonesia have a young fleet of coal-fired power plants, and if they are not retired, the energy transition will not happen. So this project of early retirement of CFPPs are critical to have a successful energy transition in Indonesia. So in conclusion, I know that we are short on time. Energy transition is clearly critical to achieve the net zero goals. And it will require a substantial amount of financing. And it will need to balance the sustainability goals with affordability to be successful. And the various schemes using blended finance need to be scaled up to achieve these goals, including access to markets, as were discussed by Judy earlier. And discussion like this panel today, I think, are quite helpful to make sure that there is some progress made on this financing, because blended finance has been discussed for many years, but so far is still in its infancy and has seen very little project done. So I hope that by having these discussions with the right stakeholders, we can gradually move the needle and have an impact and see more projects done using blended finance. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Pa Francois. So unfortunately, due to the very limited time that we will have to end the session right now. So to summarize, I think everyone here agree that creative financing and innovative financing will play very critical roles in the financing for the energy transition, and collaboration and partnership will be very critical. So let's collaborate to strengthen the more collaboration in the future for the energy transition in Indonesia. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Before we leave the stage, we have some tokens of appreciation for all the panelists. I would like to invite Pak Darmo to present to all the panelists from non-PLN groups.